What is really, really good, social media world? Facebook page, my Facebook profile, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Shout out to everybody who is here with us live and on replay land. We're really excited about today's show. And the reason why I have somebody that is just, I'm so hyped to introduce you guys to. His name is Tony Jardu. Tony, how in the world are you doing today?
Aaron, I'm doing terrific. And I really appreciate being here today. Looking forward to talking about creative financing and answering questions that folks might have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So guys, that's exactly what we're going to be going over today. I know that primarily we're talking about wholesaling real estate, but you got to understand, wholesaling real estate is not just wholesaling on cash value. You know, it can be wholesaling on terms. And so Tony is somebody who I look up to. He's doing incredible things in business, and he's going to be breaking down for us subject to creative finance and ways that you can start building your portfolio as well without using any of your own credit. I'm really, really excited about this. Right after this intro, we're going to get right to it, guys. Let's make it happen.
We made it, that's facts, ayy. We the greatest, that's facts, ayy. Prices raising, that's facts, ayy. That's right. But we paid it, that's facts, ayy. I did. They hate it, that's facts, ayy. Cause we changing, that's facts, ayy. We did. Can't blame them, that's facts, ayy. Cause we made it, that's facts, ayy. Cherry on top, that's a goat, yeah. Where you been, I wanna know, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. I know you wanna look up for this. Baby, let me turn you up a bit. You said you made it through hell and back. Give me the scoop, baby, tell the facts. Don't be shy.
Holy smokes, we already have over 90 people on this platform across, live across all platforms. We're incredibly excited to have all of you guys here. As I mentioned, I'm here with my good friend, Tony Jardu. And we're going to be talking about creative finance today. We're going to be talking about subject two. In fact, we have a presentation for you guys. And we want you guys to be engaged with us, ask us questions, and we're here for y'all. We want you all to be able to see how you can apply this. The cool thing about it that I'm really excited about this show is that we're not just going to be talking about theory. And Tony isn't somebody who's just going to be hypothesizing about what could happen or what should happen, but Tony's somebody who actually does this. And so Tony, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you. Really quick, before we get into the value, the nuts and bolts of this, give us a quick Reader's Digest version of who you are, where you come from, and why you're qualified to be talking about this today.
Yeah, appreciate that, Aaron. Yeah, so I'm Tony Jardu, and I started my real estate journey along with my wife, Cindy, 7 years ago, almost to the day, April 15th, 2017.
Oh, wow.
On that special day, I retired from a 38-year career in banking. Most of it was on the regulatory side. So I examined banks across the country, and big banks, small banks. I was with a federal banking agency. And also during that period of time, I became somewhat of a commercial credit expert. In fact, that was the last position I had, was a commercial credit lead expert. And I learned a considerable amount of real estate knowledge. What I didn't pick up, though, was real estate investing. And while I just jumped in, Cindy and I jumped in head first into the investing waters, I did have a learning curve when we started 7 years ago. We did use and capitalize on mentorships 2 years in a row. And those paid off several times over because we learned from the ground up. And it combined with what I already knew from the lending side and appraisal side and credit, I was able to move pretty fast. So Cindy and I started out, we did some fix and flips. We did a few wholesales, more by accident than anything else. And then we started to capitalize on a default position of acquiring and holding. So building a rental portfolio, and then start also selling with seller financing. Some people call it owner financing. So we started doing that, and we moved pretty fast. One of our mentors said, move at the speed of instruction. And I love that phrase. And so we just took off. And so 7 years later, we have built rental portfolios, owner finance, notes portfolios. We've done a lot of wraps, and we've scaled back. We've hit a lot of goals. We've scaled back. And what happened is, coming into this year, I said, I like where we are portfolio-wise. What we've never really done is wholesale from a systematic approach. And I said, based on the next couple of years, let's build liquidity to do some personal things that we want to do. And what's a great way to do that but through wholesaling? And I actually had seen you several years ago, Aaron. You had come up to the DFW area and you did a RIA. You did a meeting at one of the local meetups and was impressed with you at that time. Kind of followed you. I was on the periphery of your world and followed you. And so when I decided, hey, I want to jump into this wholesaling thing, I then took a deeper dive into who you are and watched some of your podcasts, some of the podcasts you had with other people. Was very, very impressed with what you do and what you're trying to accomplish through the superhuman community. And I thought, you know what? Let's jump in. Let's get to know Aaron on a personal level. And so that's what I've decided to do, and start wholesaling with a systematized approach that I know that eventually we'll be able to automate and then accomplish the goals that we've set for ourselves.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And here you are now. And the beautiful thing about this is you're creating, and this is why I was really excited to work with you whenever I found out about, met you and found out about your story, Tony, is because you're creating a symbiotic relationship between now the wholesaling cash machine, the cash engine, and then utilizing that to be able to build this portfolio and accelerate the growth of this portfolio so that you and Cindy can do what y'all want to do, in life right now, which is really, really exciting. And but let's talk about your expertise.
Yeah, sure.
Which is creative finance. Where do you want to start? I'm basically following your lead, because even though I've done these deals before, I've done subject to, I've done seller finance, I've done owner finance. This is definitely not my expertise. I'm definitely not a pro at it. And so I was actually, one more thing I gotta say is I was selfishly excited to work with you, because I'm like, I want to pick your brain about these things and learn about these things. And you've already taught me a few nuggets that I'm now utilizing. So I'm excited, guys, to be able to share Tony's wealth of knowledge with you guys on this platform. By the way, last thing before we get into the nuts and bolts, Tony, we have over 120 people live across all platforms. Okay. Shout out to everybody who's here investing their time and energy with us. And the thousands of people who are going to watch this on the replay on YouTube and Instagram and Twitch and Facebook. We just love you guys so much for supporting us. And just know that even if we don't know you and we're not knee to knee in actual physical proximity, just know we are kindred spirits, and you guys are our people. You're entrepreneurs, you're investors, and we are of the same kind. Just so you know, and so we're happy to have y'all here. So Tony, where do we go from here? Let's hop into this and get into this Creative Finance 101.
Okay, so how can I share my screen? Hit the present button.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay, let's try that. And screen sharing within 2 monitors.
While Tony is sharing his screen, because once he shares it, I'm gonna pull it up. Let us know in the comment section, y'all. Where are y'all tuning in from? I want to shout you guys out and show y'all some love, because I've seen over the last few episodes, we've had over 20 states represented in each one of our episodes. I was really excited to see people tuning in from Canada, the Philippines, tuning in from Egypt, tuning in from Colombia, Peru. Shout out to everybody who's constantly supporting us and showing us love. Also, if y'all have any questions, definitely throw them in the comments section so that we can answer them. We can engage with you guys and and you can get the most out of being here with us.
Okay, so I have to jump through a couple hoops here. Aaron, it's asking me to go into, yeah.
Totally fine.
Okay.
All right. So while Tony is getting his presentation set up, what we're going to be talking about today, y'all, is creative finance subject to, and I want to walk you through really quick one of my favorite creative finance deals that I've ever done. This was in a small little hole in the wall town south of San Antonio called Elmendorf. Okay, so gentleman comes into our database. All right, we hit him up. Cash offer is, it doesn't really make sense for him, and he says no to the cash offer. However, we noticed that the property, by the way, this is a mobile home. Okay, it's a 3-bed, it was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot Palm Harbor mobile home on half an acre in a small town south of San Antonio called Elmendorf. Okay, and you know, cash offer didn't make sense for this gentleman, and so we made him an offer to purchase his property subject to the mortgage. Now watch this. He owed $80,000 on the property. All right, the ARV was about 180. Okay, the property didn't need that much work, and so we end up getting it under contract. There he is.
Oh, sorry about that.
You're good. And I'm gonna keep breaking down the story while you're getting your presentation together, Tony.
Okay.
And so we offer to purchase the property subject to the mortgage. In other words, where we would become owners of the property, but so the deed would be in our name, but the mortgage would stay in the name of the seller. And he said, do I need to pay anything for that? Do I need to come out of pocket? Do I need to pay any closing costs? We said nothing. And so we ended up buying this $180,000 property for all of the closing costs, which was about $1,800. So we paid $1,800 for a $180,000 property. We're now the owners. The mortgage on the property was about $880. We sold the property for about $160,000 on a wrap. And we sold it for $160,000 with a 10% down payment. So remember, we put up $1,800 for the property. And we requested, I see the presentation right here. I'm about to pull it on the screen. So,
Great.
so we put $1,800 into buying the property for the closing costs. We sold it for $160 at 10% down. We collected $16,000 up front. And then at like a 6 or 7% interest rate, something like that, which was, you know, way over what the interest rates were a few years ago. And we ended up cash flowing about $600-700 on this property. The tenant owner defaulted on the note. I learned about the deed in lieu clause during this situation. And basically, we got the deed back in lieu of foreclosure, and we were able to fix the property up, sell it, and fix it up and sold it. And we made, you know, about $50,000-60,000 in cash injection on that deal. Now thinking back to it, I should have resold the note, you know, instead of cashing out of that deal, because that was such a great deal. But just so many incredible things you can do with creative finance. Tony's going to break this down for us, y'all. We're bringing this on the screen right now. And Tony, the show is yours, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Okay. Creative financing. What actually is it? Kind of boils down to this. It's a transaction where you don't use your credit. You don't use your credibility. And you use little to none of your own money. That's basically creative financing. How we get there is through several different vehicles. But what I want to point out, this is really important. This may be a little bit different for folks who just do wholesaling when you're talking to a seller. Because with creative financing, you have an opportunity to structure deals outside of just a cash offer. But you're not really going to be able to do that unless you know the seller's true motivation. And that motivation includes what they want to use the cash for. Because the fact of the matter is, most of the people that we talk to, they want cash, right? They want cash. Doesn't matter if it's $60,000 they're going to sell the property for. They want $60,000, or it's $460,000. They want cash. So one of the questions that I ask sellers is, let's say Aaron's the seller. I'll say, Aaron, you're looking to get $150,000 for this property. That's going to be a big pile of money. What do you plan to do with all that cash? See, I want to know what they want the cash for, because I'm going to dig a little deeper. And when they say, now sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. If they say, well, we need to buy a new house, or we need to get out of some credit card debt, or we need to pay a medical bill, whatever that might be, the follow-up question that will help you craft creative financing offers is, how much of that cash do you need now? How much do you need now? Because the reality is, for most people, they're not going to have a use for all that cash right now. Many, many people don't have a need for that cash right now. They have a need for some of it. All right, so get to the bottom of that. Because if you can identify the pain points for people, their seller motivation, and know what they want to use the cash for, you can get very creative. And this next point here, limitless potential of deal structuring can take place. The point that you have to understand with all of this is, when you're purchasing a property or putting a property under contract, as long as you get your price or your terms, you have a deal. Obviously, a lot of wholesalers are looking to just do cash deals. You have dollar signs in your mind because you want to make that assignment fee. Fantastic. I'm going to show you some examples where with creative financing, the dollar amounts over time can be significantly greater, even on small transactions. So what are we talking about here when we say creative financing? What are these strategies? Subject to, Aaron mentioned that. Subject to means subject to the existing financing. That is the seller's financing. Seller finance. All right. A lot of people call it owner finance. Some people call it owner carry. Some people get into battles over the word choice. Well, seller finance is not the same as owner finance. All right. For this conversation, I am going to use those terms interchangeably. Seller finance. I am not going to be so nuanced to say only use seller finance when you mean this. Only use owner finance. I don't care. Okay. For those people who have to be technically correct, fantastic. I don't. So I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. Seller finance, owner carry, owner finance. And we're going to talk about that. Creative financing can involve a combination of subject to and seller finance. Right? I'm working right now with Aaron. He's in your community, DeMarcus, and we're actually looking at a potential transaction that would be a combination of not just subject to and seller finance, but also some cash. And there's ways to find that cash. All of it's creative financing. Number 4 is wraps. And we're going to talk about what wraps are. Aaron mentioned them just a few minutes ago, mentioned that he did one, and we'll get into what the wraps are. And for those of you who are in the state of Texas, you really need to pay attention because the laws changed on that a couple of years ago. Another creative financing strategy is lease purchase options. And we don't necessarily do these in Texas. We'll talk about why we can't do them strictly the way a lot of people do them in other states. We have some prohibitions on that. And a 6th creative financing strategy, and this isn't the end of the list, but it's what I'm going to talk about, are master leases. All right, so this is what we're going to touch on. So let's start with subject to. It all boils down to you taking over payments, right? The technical definition for assuming a loan in the banking world, if you're dealing with a commercial bank and you mentioned assumption, a loan assumption, the technical definition is that you as the buyer will be underwritten by that lender. So I try to stay away from using the word assumption, because to me, in my long banking career, it meant something a little bit different than what most investors refer to, because they'll say subject to, where you're taking over payments or you're assuming the loan payments. Okay. Just understand there is a technical difference for some banks. So I like to stay away from that word, because I don't want to, as the buyer, I don't want to be underwritten by the lender before I take over payments. Being underwritten would mean that they would need my financial information to see if I have the ability to repay. Well, I don't want that. That kind of goes against the grain of why you want to do some of these transactions. So the idea of acquiring a property subject to the existing financing is that the actual title to that property, the deed in the state of Texas, the deed transfers to you, but the loan does not. So you, as the buyer, will never be on the loan documents. The seller remains on the loan documents, which means you personally have, you and your company, whoever acquires it, you have a moral and ethical obligation to make payments on that seller's loan if that title transfers to you. The seller's lender will be involved. This can create some stress for people. Anybody know why it creates stress? Well, if you bring it to the attention of the seller's lender, Aaron referenced this, there is some little thing in that deed of trust that says due on sale clause. And that creates some stress for some investors. And we're going to touch on that in just a few minutes. But let me ask this. How do you know if the seller even has a loan? Subject to only works if they have a loan. If they don't have a loan, we're going to talk about how to acquire properties with seller financing, owner financing. But if they have a loan, then that may be an option that you can throw at them when they don't want your cash offer. How do you know? Here's how I know. During my conversation with a seller, at some point during my conversation, when I'm asking questions about the property, what do they have going on, trying to find their motivation, I ask this question. Aaron, this sounds like a property that really might work for us. If we purchase it, will we have to pay off any taxes, liens, or a mortgage? It is amazing how many people will just tell you. And then a follow-up question, which a lot of times I don't even have to follow up with. Follow-up question is, do you have any idea, ballpark-wise, how much you owe? Because when I ask the question, will we have to pay off any taxes, liens, or a mortgage? Quite often, quite often the seller tells me, yeah, I have a mortgage and we have about a $79,000 balance. I used to just come right out and ask, do you owe any money on this property? And that is just such a harsh way to ask that same question. And what I found by asking that is I had people would put up a wall and they didn't want to deal with me. And then because it was too personal to ask that question, by just changing the verbiage and how you ask that question can make the difference in you getting the information you need to know whether or not they have an existing loan on that property. And try it. You'll be amazed. My success rate in getting that information went up significantly when I changed how I asked that question. So, what are your exit strategies when you acquire a property subject to? Why don't you put some in the chat box? Let's see what you come up with. What are some exit strategies you have if you acquire a property subject to?
I love it. Yeah, I want to see some engagement. So in other words, whenever you acquire the property subject to, how can you actually monetize it on the back end, y'all? Put it in the comments section. Put it in the comments section so we can engage with y'all. Somebody says short-term rentals.
Okay.
I like it. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody says wholesale it. Novation.
Okay.
You can't see this one because it's on Instagram. Snatched by Key says rent to own.
Rent to own, RTO. Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, somebody else says rent to own.
Yeah.
Lease option on IG. Somebody says flip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we got a few people in here. Somebody says somebody on YouTube. Somebody on YouTube says rap.
Rap. Yeah. Yeah.
Roy Cruz says sub 2 rap.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Joanne Quintana says Airbnb.
Yeah. We're missing one that most people miss.
What are we missing?
Yeah. Okay. You all are correct. You can wholesale it. You can wholesale it. You can fix and flip it. Sure. You can rent it long-term, mid-term, short-term. You can set up a silver living. You can sell it. Yes. Yes. Of course. You can do that. You can house swap. You can swap houses. All right. It was mentioned, lease option, rent to own was mentioned. How about living in it? How about making it your homestead? Yep, Don, owner finance. Yeah, making it your homestead. How about house hacking? For those of you who don't have a house, get a sub 2. The more bedrooms, the better. You house hack that. I don't know the exact percentage right now. What I've heard, and I just heard this over the weekend from somebody who really is very knowledgeable about this stuff, but he said that 60% of the mortgages in the country have a 4% or less interest rate. So imagine picking up a 3.5% mortgage, 4 bedrooms. The payment's already, I don't care how big the house is, the payment's already going to be significantly lower than what you're going to be able to buy that property at and finance it in today's interest rate market. And then you house hack that sucker. Can you imagine how successful you're going to be? All right. You don't have to go get financing. It's already in place. You're just taking over the payments. So homestead, what a great idea for people who are looking to get into properties. And you don't want to pay 7.5% interest in today's market. All right. So those are all great. Now, are all potential sub 2s good deals? Think about this. We hear it all the time. All right. There's some folks out there that are just constantly talking about sub 2, great strategy. You need to pick up some sub 2 properties. Yeah. Okay. 60% of the mortgages are 4% or less. Oh, fantastic. Right? You can go a long way with a lot of those properties, and those exit strategies we just talked about, a whole bunch of them would be available to you. But what if they had a 9% mortgage? And why would they have a 9% mortgage? Private lending. Maybe they bought it with owner financing. I've run into some of this. Do those make sense? Could you find the funding of that at a cheaper rate, you personally? So not all sub 2s necessarily make good deals. What if there's no equity in it? Let's say that you're looking at a property and you run your ARV and you see the ARV is $250,000 and their mortgage is $245,000. Does that turn you off? What if it was 150,000 ARV and the mortgage was 140,000. Would that stop you from making a creative finance offer? Maybe not. Could you rent that property? Could you turn around and sell it for $180,000 with creative financing and wrap your underlying? The underlying loan would be the subject to loan you're acquiring. So think differently. If there's no equity, there are opportunities you're passing up if you don't throw some creative offers at people. If you wholesale a deal and you want to pick up $15,000, say, and the ARV is 150,000, the subject to is 140, and you want 15 out of that. And if you came to me and I look at that and I say, you know what, I could probably turn around and sell this thing for 190 on creative financing, seller financing, I would do that. I definitely would take a look at that, especially if that interest rate is down low. So don't just pass on no or little equity deals. As long as you can make money, you can create opportunities to make offers. All right. All right. What documents do you need? This is pretty important stuff because you have to get these things right. Sometimes you only have one shot at them. So you are going to want the current mortgage statement. You're going to want a mortgage payoff. And you're going to want a reinstatement. Sometimes the mortgage payoffs, depending upon the lender, will have that information on it, the reinstatement. If not, you need a reinstatement amount if they are delinquent. Most recent one we did, we started dancing with these people in April of last year. We finally did the deal. Oh, let's see my board over here. When we do the deal, September. Took 5 months. In the meantime, they had stopped paying their loan. So when we first started, they were 2 months delinquent. By the time we closed on it, they were 7 months delinquent. And I actually asked their lender, why didn't you post this for foreclosure? And they said, let me look it up in the file. And they came back and they said, oh, they have a COVID forbearance. I was like, man, all right, we haven't closed yet. And I'm certainly not going to tell them they had a forbearance on their mortgage because I don't want them to go away. So you have to get that information. You need to know what payments you will be responsible for if you buy this property. And those payments can also include being way delinquent on the escrow account. So that'll be important as well. You want a copy of the promissory note, the mortgage, the loan, whatever they call it by that lender. You want to see the terms under which you will have to abide. You want a purchase agreement, just like you would in purchasing any property. A subject to addendum. I'm leaving it very generic. We have in Texas, I use the realtor's forms. I'm not a realtor. My wife Cindy's not a realtor, but we use the Texas Real Estate Commission forms. And there's a form. It's not called subject to. It's actually called an assumption addendum. And we use that form because that'll capture the information about the loan that you're about to take over. You also want a seller's disclosure, something that the seller fills out. Here in Texas, it's 4 pages long. You always want that. You want them to tell you what's going on with the property. Here's a key document, authorization to release loan information. You have to have that in order for you to be able to talk to the lender because you are going to want to talk to the lender. You just can't take the seller's word. You have to see these other statements and you want to talk to the lender about this. An unlimited POA, power of attorney, limited. It's limited to just that property. So you want to be able to talk to anybody, an insurance company, a lender. You can do that with the authorization to release loan information and then with the limited power of attorney. Again, it's limited to just that property and that loan. All right. How to get those mortgage docs? Best way to do it? Set up a conference call with you, the seller / borrower, and their mortgage company. Set up a conference call. Done this. It works. Because the other thing you want to do is you want to gain access to that loan online so that at any point in time, once you've acquired the property, you can go and look about the loan online. One of the ones that I have acquired subject to, the lender is Chase Mortgage. Now, Chase Bank is one of the 4 biggest banks in the country. That's great. I know some investors think the bigger the bank, the more trouble they can get into doing these sub-2s. I find it to be just the opposite.
That's right. Yeah.
It's the smaller banks where you may have some questions asked, where the due on sale clause may come up in a conversation. See, what a lot of folks don't realize is when a bank makes a loan, whether it's Chase, B of A, Wells Fargo, Citibank, it doesn't matter. Those are the biggest 4. But any bank, a lot of those loans they make to an owner-occupant, they get sold.
Mm-hmm.
No longer has them. They may be servicing them to collect taxes and insurance and the payments, but they no longer have them. They are packaged. Loans are packaged and sold in the secondary market. So do you really think that these big banks who sell off their loans are monitoring $150,000, $350,000 mortgage loans? No, they're not. And they're in a security that is sold on the secondary market, so it's traded. So I'm not worried about these big banks. I'm not worried about mid to even smaller banks. But when you get down to the really local community banks, that's who will be more often than not likely to ask you some questions about this. But you do need to get the information. So once you have the authorization to release loan information signed by the seller, that will allow you to speak on the seller's behalf to the lender. Right. Due on sale. So we touched on it. What does it mean? Here's the typical language. Depending upon the lender, they may have fewer words in here, but the big point to take away is what's bolded here in red. The lender may, at its option, the lender has the right to declare the entire balance. They may declare it. It doesn't mean they will do it. But does it happen? From time to time, yes. For the great majority of us who do these sub-2 transactions, it hasn't. But it does from time to time. Certain lenders, especially the smaller lenders, may question the fact that the seller has now sold the property and not paid off their loan. But if they do, you have to have a conversation with the lender because you're taking over the payments. They're not going to miss a beat. Most lenders, one, they don't want to get paid back on the loan. Yeah, I know you got a 3.5% mortgage and today's rate environment is 7%. But these small lenders, they're not lending like they did when it was 3.5% interest rate environment. It's harder for them to lend at 7%. It really is. So the likelihood is minimal. It's very low, but it does happen from time to time. It does not scare me or a lot of the investors I know who do sub-2 lending. Here's the big one. This is the one that causes issues. It's homeowners insurance. Because when you pick up a property subject to the existing financing, you have to get insurance. Now, if you're doing it personally or you're doing it through an LLC, whatever entity is the new owner has to get insurance under their name, and you will be the insurance holder. You send that to the mortgage company. The seller's insurance, once you have insurance in place, the seller's insurance needs to be terminated. This is where the limited power of attorney comes in. It can come in handy here. The most recent one we did, our seller he was an interesting dude. and not somebody I wanted to deal with after the transaction. So because I had the power of attorney, once I had the insurance in place, I called his insurance company, sent them the limited power of attorney. While I had them on the phone, sent it to them. They received it. And I said, please cancel the insurance. Limited power of attorney allows you to do that. So you put the insurance in your name or your company's name, send it to the mortgage company, cancel the seller's insurance after you have yours in place. The seller is listed as an additional interest on the insurance policy, on your insurance policy. Their lender, the mortgage company, is the first mortgagee. You must get this right. You can run into all sorts of problems if you don't. So get this right. All right. We're going to jump to seller finance. Open it up to questions on subject 2 if anyone has any. And now let's look at seller finance, owner carry. You know what it is? It seriously just boils down to the terms you and the other party can agree upon. That's it. That's what seller financing is. Whether you're the seller or you're the buyer, it's whatever you and the other party can agree to. It results in a promissory note between the seller and the buyer. A promissory note. That's it. I would use, title is transferred. Now, if you're in a mortgage state, obviously it's a mortgage. If you're in a deed state like we are here in Texas, it's a deed, the warranty deed, vendor's lien, that gets transferred. All right. Use an attorney. I'm not an attorney, not a realtor, but I always use an attorney and a title company, a fee attorney to write up the documents. I provide them the information. We use standard realtor contracts here, but I also provide a document that I call a loan term sheet that outlines everything that we need in the promissory note and in the deed. And we always close at a title company. Sorry, what was that last one? My screen is blocked. Yeah, you can purchase or sell with seller financing. Okay. What are the advantages? There's a lot. No credit check. Highly unlikely the seller is going to ask you. I've never been asked for any financial information. We just did one just a couple months ago, and we bought the property. He actually called me. It was somebody that we met 6 years ago. We met this person 6 years ago. We had some common interests outside of real estate. We met him through direct mail. We sent him a yellow letter, and we became friends. And he showed us a property he had. He had a number of properties. He showed us a property he had back then. It was 6 years ago. And he was not interested in selling it at that time. We stayed in contact. 6 years later, in late October, he calls me up and he says, I'm interested in selling a property. Wanted to know if you might be interested in buying it. And I said, what's the address? He tells me. I did not remember it was the same property we had seen 6 years prior. And I look it up on Google Maps. It's like 20 minutes from my house. And I'm like, I'll be darned. That's the same property we saw 6 years ago where we actually walked the property. Liked it then, liked it even more now because he said, I'll sell it to you for X amount and I'll do 50% owner financing. Okay, let's do this. And so we agreed to do that. In filling out the paperwork, he said, I don't need any credit information. There's no loan apps. There's no banks. There was no waiting. We just had to set it up with a title company. There was no stress. Well, what about the other 50%? You know what I did? I called one of our private money lenders. I said, would you be interested in a second lien? I'll pay you this. And I'd like 5 years on the money. And they said, let's do it. Because we've done about 50 transactions with that private money lender. And when you build up a credit history of repaying with certain lenders, they like you to come back more and more. So that's what we do with this guy. He took a second lien on this property. We put in zero of our own money to acquire this property because our second lien lender, I actually asked for more than 50%, so it would cover our closing costs. And the terms you can come up with on seller financing, they can be interest only, which is IO. It can be principal only, PO. Principal and interest, many other options. You can combine things. Many advantages to seller financing, but not having to go find the money is the huge one. Here's an example. We bought this house. This house is in Fort Worth, Texas, where we live. ARV at the time that we bought it, this was a few years ago. This was in 2018. $102,000 was the ARV. The seller was asking for $65,000. I estimated repairs to be $15,000. At the time, the market rent was $900. Okay, let's go. What's your offer? How much are you going to offer? Let's hear it. Put it in the chat box. These numbers are simple. Simple math. What's your offer? Aaron, you're muted.
No, I was gonna say, I'm excited to see what people are gonna put here.
Come on.
If you're engaged with us, definitely put it in the chat, YouTube, Facebook.
Let's go. You guys want to buy properties? You want to put properties on a contract? You want to make money? How are you going to make money on this? What's your offer?
Cue the Jeopardy theme music.
Dun 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 dun. Nobody? Any offers? Here we go. 40,000, Michael. All right, 40,000.
All right. Sahara Ali says whatever they
owe plus 10. They don't owe anything. So you're only going to give them $10,000? It was free and clear. Yeah. MAO is around 50. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 65 from Monica Williams. You're going to give them what they wanted. Barrington, 102. Wow. All right. Start offer around 42. Great.
Unpredictable 876 on Instagram says 77K.
77. Woo. Love it. All right. Very good.
Zay Honcho on Instagram says 45,000.
45. Okay. Well, look, if you did the historical, traditional 70% of ARV, as long as they give you terms. All right, Leandra, I like the way you're thinking. So if you give them the 70%, that's 71,000 minus 15 for the repairs. That brings you down to 56. And then minus 15 for your assignment fee. Yeah, you're going to offer 41. Not. Let me also share with you this. At the time, now he had just evicted a tenant. And his rent that he was collecting was $850. And then here's what the taxes and insurance were at the time. This is how I always do my rental cash flow. CF is cash flow. I always put in a percentage for vacancy. I use 8%, and I put in 5% for repairs. The reason I put 8% in for vacancy is this is a monthly cash flow analysis. I put 8% in for vacancy on rentals because 12 times 8 is 96. So basically 1 month of rent I would be missing if my tenant leaves, because my hope is I would turn that property within a month and put a new tenant in there. So allocate 72,000 in this case. All right. So 509 was the net rent amount, or NOI. But how are you going to pay for it? Right? Now, if you just wanted to wholesale it, see, the problem was he had offers in the 60s. All right. I didn't know it until I made my offer, but he had offers in the 60s. So you're going to buy it. You want to do the Burr method. Buy, rehab, rent, repeat. Rent, refinance, repeat. All right. You purchase with private hard money, 70% loan to value, maybe a little bit higher, 8 to 12% interest rates, rehab, rent it, refi at 70, 80. At the time we did this loan, at the time we did this transaction, it was 3.5 to 5.5% in the interest rate market. But today it's 6.6 to 10 or even more, maybe. All right. Here's how we bought it. He rejected our cash offer. $56,247. Pretty exact, right?
Yeah.
You know why? Psychology. Psychology. We never end in 2 zeros. I will work up the numbers and I'll come up with like 57. And I'll yell at the house and I'll say, Cindy, give me 2 numbers. And she'll say 47. And so I'll add the 2 in there. And that's how we come up with 56,247. Seriously. Cindy, give me a number. 2 digits. 13. All right. And I put it in. Because we have been told so many times with our offers, obviously, you've calculated this down to the dollar. You've done a lot of analysis on this. I want to hear that from sellers. Absolutely. All right. We purchased it for $71,628. We gave him a down payment of $4,669. He owner financed $66,959. So Leandro, we're right on target here. We did have to pay him a little bit more. He financed it for 2 years, 2.67% interest, $400 a month P&I. The reason it was 2.67% interest was that was the way I got it to work because I only wanted to pay $400 a month in P&I. So you work it. Those of you who have mortgage calculators, you can figure that out. I did it on a 30-year amortization. I said, his name was Lawrence. I said, Lawrence, we can go a lot longer than 2 years on this if you like that cash flow, and you won't have to deal with any tenants, repairs, insurance, taxes. It's all on me. And he said, by the way, he was 82 and he was on oxygen. He was carrying a tank around. And he said, Tony, I may not be around in 2 years. So I said, okay, we'll do this deal. And I asked for a deferment on payments for 2 months because I needed to rehab it. You can get creative. I should have asked for 3 months, but I asked for 2 because I built some rapport with him and it worked. So here's how we bought it. Oh, sorry. We rehabbed it. It cost $20,000. We had an unforeseen plumbing problem that led to replacing all the plumbing lines out to the street. Cost $5,000. Our rent was $950 instead of what I thought market rent was $900. We went $950 and we got it. 2 years later, we paid him off the 60. Well, it actually had reduced down to 61,000, but we refied out at 75,000. 2 years later, we took cash out of 86.59 because we had to pay closing costs on that loan. And what happened was that cash, for those of you, I'm sure a lot of you know, cash out, tax-free. Tax-free. You don't pay tax on it because it's debt. The rent today is $1,130. And we now have $93,000 in equity on that property. Okay. That's a seller finance deal. And we've done a bunch of these. So can you make some money? Yeah. Now that 93 in equity, it's not cash until we sell it or refinance, but it's sitting there. We know it's there. All right. And we make money on the rent. Aaron, I'm having trouble reading this.
Yep. The first one says every 6 to 12 months, contact the note holder.
Yeah. So here's the idea. If you have the cash or the ability to refi out and it's going to make sense for you, offer to buy out the note with the seller at a discount. Sometimes their situation in life changes and they want money. They need the money. So with that loan, let's use that loan. We had an owner finance note of $66,959. And let's say that 12 months later, I called Lawrence and I said, Lawrence, look, I just unexpectedly came into some cash and I've got an extra 50 sitting around. How about I pay you that 50 and we call it square on the note? What's the worst he's going to say? No, I like the cash flow. Or he may say, you know what? Something changed in my life. Yeah, I could use that money right now. Now, his loan was only 2 years, so that's not going to really work that great. But if you have a longer term seller finance, try it. You might get a great discount. And now you're going to be banking a ton of money. All right. So offer to purchase that note at a discount. Combo financing, strategy 3. And if you have any questions, just throw them out there. Throw them out. I'll stop at any point. Here's a combo financing. The seller has a loan and they have a whole bunch of equity. Ooh, yeah, the seller's got, let's see, 200 houses worth 225. They know it all day long. It's 225. Their loan is sitting at 150. Dang, that's a lot of equity to come up with. How do you do it? What if you asked them to finance it? Once again, how much cash do you need, Aaron, right now? I know there's $60,000 or $70,000 of equity, but how much of that cash, Aaron, do you need right now? I know you spent a lot of money on your hairdo and all that kind of stuff and trimming that beard. It looks great. But how much of the cash do you need? Now, seriously, folks, you can do this by just simply asking some questions. Once again, the worst they're going to say is, no, I really want all that cash. Well, you know what? And I've said this too. I've said this many times. Aaron, I understand you want that cash. Let me ask you, are you going to put it into another investment? Because I'm always looking for alternative investments that will provide me with a good yield. Because if you know of something that makes a lot of sense, maybe I'll invest in it too. What are you going to do with the cash? Yeah, ask them. Have a conversation. All right. Wraps. Yeah. Wrap. Okay. So here's how the wrap works. You purchase a property. It has financing. Whether it's sub 2, seller financing, or you have borrowed the money, it will need to be longer term. Longer term could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be a 30-year loan, but it needs to be longer than just short-term money. You're going to rehab it, or maybe you don't, the property. Then you turn around and sell it on terms, a loan to the buyer. You sell it on terms. So you're selling with owner financing. Your loan stays in place. The loan you have for that property stays in place. You then turn around and sell it to an end buyer. That end buyer might move into it. They might rent it. They might be an investor. They might be an owner occupant. That buyer's loan, when you do this, when we do it, that's a second or junior lien position held by our company. In essence, what takes place then is that buyer's loan wraps around the seller's loan. So let's look at one. Here's one. We purchased this property for $93,000. We borrowed $95,000. I should have borrowed more, but I borrowed $95,000. We did the BRRRR method. We rehabbed it. We rented it. We did 2 refis. We got all our money out of it through the refis. All our money came back to us because we rehabbed it out of personal funds. When we refied it, we had no money left in it of our own. We then sold it with owner financing. This took place over a period of 2 years. We sold it for $209,000. We took a $21,000 down payment. The buyer's loan to us, $188,000 at 9% over 30 years. Our debt was $130,000 at 5.85%, 20 years. That's what our debt is. This is really important right here, this difference. This is a maturity mismatch in our favor. The amortization for the borrower, our buyer, is 30 years. Our underlying loan that we did not pay off is only 20 years. You know what that results in? That results in the equity piece between what they owe us, the borrower, and what we owe our lender. I call that loan equity. that loan equity grows by 4.5% every year. That's important. Our monthly cash flow is $507. All right, that's okay. That's pretty good. We have no money in it. We have zero money. What is the yield on $507 a month when your cash invested is zero? How many of you want that? Picture it this way. You have $10,000 invested in the stock market. You get $500 a month. Holy crap, that's a lot. That's $6,000 a year. That's 60% return. But what if you didn't have to invest $10,000 and out of the kindness of somebody's heart, your mutual fund pays you $500 a month? It's an infinite return. That's what we have here. But better than the stock market, we have something as collateral we can go and touch. Our current note equity is now 63 because the note equity increases 4.5% a year due to that maturity mismatch. Our loan pays more toward principal than our borrower's loan pays toward principal. Our borrower's loan payments pay toward principal. Why did we sell this beautiful property? It was 100 years old. We were starting to have some pretty big repair problems, and we were able to receive greater than market value when we sold it because we sold it with owner financing. All right. Here are the pros. It's mailbox money. Cindy loves to call it mailbox money. The reality is we don't have money coming to the mail. It's automatically deposited in our account because we use a loan servicing company when we do these wraps so that they collect the payments from our borrowers and they remit the payment to us after the check or however our borrowers are paying when that clears. We get cash at closing in the form of a down payment. We no longer have responsibility for property taxes, insurance, and repairs. The negative, when I've talked about this with other investors, are like, man, I got to do these. These are fantastic. These sound great. Oh, yeah. I got to do them. All right, hang on. Take a pause. There's some negatives. You no longer own the real estate. You've exchanged the real estate for a note receivable. That means any value appreciation in that real estate goes to your buyer, not you. You don't get any tax benefits because you don't own the real estate. You have a note. It is likely going to be a declining asset, that note receivable, because it gets paid down every month, unless you have some note equity increases because of a maturity mismatch, an amortization mismatch, like I just pointed out. But if you lend it out at 30-year amortization and your underlying loan is 30-year amortization, you don't get that equity increase every year. All right. What if the borrower refis? Yeah, we've had a bunch of them refi. That's great because we've blessed a lot of people with home ownership. And that's why we do this. We want to bless people with home ownership, those that, for whatever reason, can't get conventional financing. But here's a really big negative. What if they stop paying? What if your borrower stops paying? Okay, I'm going to tell you, a lot of the people out there, if you watch anybody, you hear any of these gurus, they talk about owner financing. Here's the next thing they say. And if somebody stops paying, it's all right. You foreclose and you just go out there and you do it again. And you get another down payment and off to the races you go. Yay. Oh my gosh. It's all sunshine. Yes, it's wonderful. Let me tell you the reality. You guys ready for the reality? All right. We did a wrap. A second one with this guy. He begged me to do a second one. So I sold him this property. And I sold him the property for $170,000, or let's see, his loan to us was $170,000. Our underlying loan was $116,000. And he's paying, and then all of a sudden he stops paying. And he's hard to get a hold of. And so last year in March, we posted him for foreclosure. In Texas, it doesn't take long to foreclose on somebody. First Tuesday of every month. This was March of 2023. The night before, at 4:00, night before the auction, foreclosure auction, he declares bankruptcy. Whoa, that stops everything. Bankruptcy. All right. It takes 4 months. In July, we finally get released from the bankruptcy. Oh, yeah. He had a tenant in the house. He was renting it. He had income coming in. The fact that I wanted to hit him hard, yeah, that was in play too. But he didn't live nearby. So he declares bankruptcy. We get released from bankruptcy. Great. We start the foreclosure process. He had not paid since October of 2022. We're now in July of 2023. I had to pay an attorney for the foreclosure. I had to pay a bankruptcy attorney, $525 an hour. And my expenses are going up. He stopped paying the insurance. I had to put the insurance, forced place insurance on the property. All right. We start the foreclosure process all over again. Guess what? He declares bankruptcy in another state, California. Whoa, what's up with that? Because he had one of his he had loans with other companies and other properties. He declares bankruptcy in California. Takes us 2 months. We get released from that. Start the foreclosure process all over again. Yeah. You know what he did? He declared bankruptcy in New York. What the heck? I emailed my foreclosure attorney. I said, I'm not going to believe this. He just declared bankruptcy in New York. 3 states down, only 47 more to go. This is fun. Oh. Right? So I contact the bankruptcy attorney. And every time you contact a bankruptcy attorney, what do you hear in your head when you pick up the phone? Cha-ching, because he's charging $525 an hour. You got to keep those conversations short. He says, continue with your foreclosure. He's not going to get this thing through. He's been kicked out of court twice, 2 different states. We finally foreclosed on him January 2nd of 2024. At that time, his loan balance, about $170,000. But his missed payments and all of my attorney's expenses and the insurance I paid, he owed us $36,000. So my point here is seller financing is great when it works, and we love it, and we're going to continue to do it. We really do like it a lot. But you better have some money in reserve, just like you need money in reserve when you have a buy and hold property, a rental. You need money in reserve. These things aren't free. Things happen. And if your borrower goes belly up on you, you continue to have your loan payment. Oh, to add misery to insult to injury on this one, we acquired it. We knew the tenants because we had met them. And he, of course, wasn't paying anything. So the property tax bill was due. So as soon as we acquire it, I got to pay a $3,600 property tax. Yeah. Oh, and he never fixed the bathroom. And that was $6,000. So these things can be costly when they move against you, and you do have to have money in reserve, but they're beautiful when they work. I have to tell you this, for those of you who are in Texas, there is a regulation that went into effect January 1st, 2022. This is for Texas only. I don't know about the other states. If you're going to do a wrap mortgage, this was under State Bill 43. That's how a lot of us refer to it. You have to be a licensed residential mortgage loan originator. That's an RMLO. Banks are, mortgage companies are, they're licensed to lend money. They're licensed to underwrite. And that's what a loan originator is, a licensed loan originator. You need to be one. You can do up to 3 wraps in a rolling 12-month period without a license. If you do a 4th one in that rolling 12-month period, you need to be licensed, or you can use a correspondent lender. For those of you, I don't want to go too deep into this. For those of you who are more interested in that, you can reach out to me. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I've talked to plenty of attorneys about this. I've talked to the RMLO, Residential Mortgage Loan Originator, who we used. In fact, I was just on the phone with her last week because we're in the process of doing another one of these. And I want to make sure everything is right. You also need to use a loan servicer, which makes sense. All of this stuff makes sense. Use a residential mortgage loan originator. The cost to do that goes to the buyer of the property. And then there's a disclosure statement requirement, but you have to close with an attorney or title company. So we always close these at a title company. So just understanding, in Texas, if you're going to wrap a mortgage, you have to be compliant. And it's best to just do these things anyway. It just makes total sense. Benefits of being compliant. We use a company called Texas Pride Lending. Shout out to Sarah Montes. We pass the cost on to the buyer. Because if you ever borrow money from anybody, like a bank or a mortgage company, do they carry any of your costs? No, they pass them on to you. Now, they may build them into the loan, but they're going to get them anyway. And the reason we use an RMLO is we're always compliant with the mortgage regs. Use a loan servicer. Again, you pass the costs on. You pass the costs on to the buyer. Ours that we use, it's August REI, $35 a month. There's plenty of them out there. All right. A lot of them out there. They collect the payments from your borrower. They take care of the escrow for taxes and insurance as long as you set it up that way. And why you wouldn't, I would have no idea. Always set it up with escrow for taxes and insurance. And then they take care of all of the appropriate tax forms at the end of the year, and they send in the insurance premium when it's due. Why bother with that headache? Let somebody else do it, especially when the cost is borne by your buyer. All right, let me hustle through the rest of this. Lease purchase options. Can you or can't you do these in Texas? They are difficult to do in Texas. They're considered an executory contract. That means you are an executory contract. You're deferring a material action of some kind by either party. And you see these with land contracts. A contract for deed, that defers ownership of the property. You have difficulty doing these in Texas. In Texas, a lease purchase option, the option has to be exercised within 180 days. I deal with real estate attorneys, several of them, and the real estate attorneys I deal with don't want to do these because they're too onerous and they just take up too much time and they can get to be too complicated. I know people that do some lease purchases options in Texas. How they remain compliant, I don't know. Is this a valid and viable strategy in other states? Oh my gosh, yes. It works great. And then it gets really complicated when you start putting in sandwich leases. And so if you're in one of those other states, I highly recommend you investigate some time, use some time, and learn about these because they could be a great option for creative financing. And the last one is master lease. What is that? Well, how about you rent a property, you sign the lease, try to get a 2-year lease, and then you sublease it out for what reason? Short-term, mid-term rentals. Yeah. You'll see these a lot throughout the country where people will sign leases. They're not buying the property themselves, but they do set it up because they're renting it out to someone else who's going to operate it as a short-term or mid-term rental. So you're basically subleasing it. But you need a master lease with the person who owns the property in order to do that. And you definitely want to disclose what you're about to do if you plan to sublease it. And so we have friends in Oklahoma who do this with properties, and they are killing it with sober living facilities where they don't own the properties. They're leasing them, and then they sublease it out to an operator who operates it for sober living. Just a great idea if it is something you want to pursue. And Aaron.
Yes, sir.
That's what I got.
Tony, you are an absolute gem of a human being. Thank you, guys. If you're on IG or YouTube or LinkedIn, please show some love, man. Eamon says, man, Tony Jardu is a wealth of knowledge. I'm taking notes like a madman. Carlos Todd said,
Yeah, thanks, guys.
He said okay, so guys, do you have any questions for Tony? Remember that Tony, just like Eamon said, he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to creative finance, when it comes to seller finance and sub-twos and all of these. What questions do you have? Here's our first question from Adonai Atlanta Realty. He says, how much does loan servicing cost you? Yeah.
So it doesn't cost me anything as the person who initiates that transaction to sell. The company that I use, though, the cost gets passed on to the buyer. They used to be $50 for a setup. I think they're $100 for setup now, and that goes into the settlement statement. So it's identified, but basically gets buried with all those other costs that they're going to pay for the buyer. And then on a monthly ongoing basis, it's $35 a month for the company that I use. Some companies are a little bit less, but the reason why I use the company I do, August REI, here in Texas, is that they report to one of the credit bureaus. And that's a selling point for me when I'm talking to a potential buyer, that you're going to get credit for one of the biggest things that can impact your credit score in a positive manner. And that is, as a renter, you don't get credit for that payment because it doesn't get reported to the credit bureaus. But you do get credit for it here with your mortgage payment, because I use a loan servicer that reports to a credit bureau. So $35 gets passed on to the seller. When I present the terms for my buyers, it gets passed on to the buyer, I mean, not the seller. When I present my terms for the owner finance deal, I always include that $35 piece in the monthly payment. And I break it out. I always show it to them. Full disclosure, you got to be very transparent with these.
I love it. I love it. Somebody says, can you have a lender approve your buyer?
So here's how these work. You, as the originator of this loan, well, you're not originating. You're hiring somebody to originate it. You, as the lender, you have final approval. You need to maintain final approval on these. You don't want somebody else making that decision. You have to make that decision. It is your property. It is your responsibility to make the decision. The RMLO will put together all of the financial information. They're going to get the financial information from your buyer. They're going to check all the boxes to be compliant with the Dodd-Frank Act for mortgage lending. They are going to put a package together. You're going to get that package ahead of time as the lender. Included in there are the appropriate loan disclosures that are required for mortgage lending that get sent to your buyer. They're going to have ratios in there, the debt to income ratio. They may have the credit score. They may have other information in there. But the final decision is yours as the lender. So you are the lender. The RMLO is not the lender. They're the underwriter, the loan originator.
Powerful, powerful.
Yeah.
Eamon says, question, what are some of your go-to qualifying questions to determine what strategy is the best fit in a given scenario? Earlier in the discovery process, that is.
Yeah. So first, I want to know if they have any debt on the property.
Yep.
So my question is, if we were to purchase this property, will we have to pay off any taxes, liens, or a mortgage? And if they're answering that question, if they're going to hold it close to the vest, I may not know. All right. But more than likely, they're going to answer that question. Yes, we have a mortgage. Oh, would you mind telling me ballpark idea how much you owe on that? Now, I know. All right. Is this a potential sub 2? So that one right away. If they tell me, no, we own it free and clear. It is amazing how many properties are owned free and clear. It's just shocking how many. I was really blown away when I started this 7 years ago, talking to sellers, how many people own properties free and clear. Because we dealt with a lot of landlords. Our go-to was non-owner occupied properties that had been owned 7 years or longer. And a lot of those had been owned a long time, and those guys had paid off small mortgages. So that's going to let me know right then and there with that question. If they answer it, do they have debt? If so, potential sub 2. If there's no debt, owner financing. I'm going that direction. I use an Excel spreadsheet that I look at deals, and it has a rental cash flow component. This is a little different than what a lot of wholesalers do. But then I didn't start out as a wholesaler, came in differently. And so I have that. I extended it. I'm really anal with numbers and analysis. So I extend that rental cash flow, and I have a seller financing component. And in my Excel spreadsheet, I also have present value table for loan amount and loan payment amount. So it's all right there. And the whole thing takes just a few minutes to do. And so I know, does this make sense by just filling out a spreadsheet once I get the information? Oh, so you have the property, it's a rental. Okay, Mr. Seller. Can you tell me how much, what do you get in market rent? And is that a term or is it month to month? And I get that information. Because if you inherit a renter, a tenant, then you have to abide by the lease agreement. Well, you need to know the information. What are you going to have to be doing with that? And we have sold a lot of our properties with owner financing to our tenants.
Beautiful, beautiful. Come on,
Yeah.
come on. Amen. Ask any follow-up questions after that you might have. Mario in YouTube world, he says, how do you fund the acquisition of creative deals? Any suggestion for someone with no money for closing and holding costs?
Yeah, great question, Mario. Great question. One that I had going into this whole thing, I came from the banking world. I heard that people were borrowing money, hard money. At the time, 2017, what was prime rate back then? Right, interest rates were, maybe you can borrow money at 5%, 6% on a commercial level. And I'm hearing people are paying, what, 10%? Who in the right mind would pay 10%? Well, you pay that through private money or hard money lending. And I soon discovered that that was the way to go. I strongly suggest this, Mario. If you're not already doing it, go to real estate meetups. Hopefully you can find some in your area. I don't know where you are, but hopefully you can find some in your areas. Go to meetups. You want to introduce yourself to people who are potential private money lenders, who are hard money lenders, not so much, because they're not going to go long-term typically. All right. But what you can do, and this is what we did in the beginning. So we did the BRRRR method, where we would borrow money short-term. We'd fix up the property. We would rent it. We would refinance and get longer-term money. And then we would sell it with owner financing. Now, because we have a great relationship with our private money lender, and he's a good close friend, and we go on vacations together, and we're in 5 properties together, it is an LLC, I just tell him what I'm going to do. I said, can I borrow money 5 years? And because we've done so many deals together. And so once you get to know someone and you establish a good track record with a private money lender, and you can do short-term deals, and you show them that you have credibility, you can start asking for different terms from your private money lender. And private money lenders, by the way, private money is relationship money. It's relationship money. It's not necessarily always who you know right now, but it's who you're going to know after you go to that next networking event. Mm-hmm. And you don't have the deal right now, but you're going to set the table for a future borrowing relationship by talking to people and tell them what you're looking for. Yeah, I'm looking for some private money lenders. And by the way, if you're paying today, even today, if you're paying 10% or more to a private money lender, they're not a private money lender. My opinion. Your private money lenders, there's so much money out there. One of the great places are self-directed IRA companies. Self-directed IRA companies. There are loads of people. I have money in a self-directed IRA, and we lend our money out, but it's only on a short-term basis. But there are so many people with money in these self-directed IRA companies who are always looking for good deals. If you have a really good deal, the money will find you. You just have to make it aware. You have to make people aware that you have good deals.
So powerful. So powerful. Tony, you came and over-delivered 100%. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming through. I believe that's all of the questions that I see from all of our platforms. Guys, go follow Tony. Tony, are you on social?
Yep. So I'm out there on Facebook, Tony Jardu, and I used to post a bunch of stuff. You can see some of my older stuff that I posted. I've done presentations on lending because I come from the banking world on how to actually borrow money, how to fill out a loan request, how to set up a business plan, all of that. I've posted a little bit of that on Instagram at tjardu. I started using a little bit of TikTok, but just I didn't want to do it at my age. And I'd rather look at reptiles and girls in bikinis on TikTok. Not necessarily in that order, but so I have some videos posted on Instagram. They're a couple, 3 years old, and you can check out some of that stuff. But I just decided I didn't want to keep posting. I'd rather just do deals.
Yeah. Completely understood.
Yeah.
With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in. Those of you who came on live, those of you, the thousands of you who are watching on replay land, DM me for a free strategy session if you are looking to take your business to the next level. We're really excited about some of the things that we're doing in our community. I'm not doing one-on-ones anymore. I'm all capped out. However, we are bringing on people into our community on a group basis. And so we're really, really excited to be able to help. It is absolutely insane, some of the things that we're seeing in regards to results and the community growing. So if you want a free strategy session with me or a member of our team, please send me a DM. We would love to be able to work with you, chop it up, and then maybe you can get access to Tony and do deals with Tony as well as myself and other killers in the community. Tony, let me ask you this before we hop off of this. What advice would you give to the newbie and rookie entrepreneurs who are watching this right now? They're just getting into the world of business. They listen to this whole thing. Some of these people, we have retained 140 just about amounts of people on this show, which is rare in today's attention to goldfish attention age, and so obviously people have you've really resonated with the people over the last 90 minutes, Tony. But yeah, for the people who are watching this, who they're just getting into the world of business, they're super inspired, they're excited to go conquer the world right now after the last few minutes. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Learn the fundamentals. Learn how to comp. So important. If you get the ARV wrong, especially with high interest rate environment today, because if you're just going to wholesale, your end buyer is going to have to get money. And if you get that ARV wrong, you are probably not going to make as much money. You could actually lose money. Understand repairs. Understand how to analyze deals. Get around the people who know how to do it. A lot of education out there. Not everybody goes deep into how to do certain things. Find a RIA that you can relate to, a Real Estate Investor Association meeting, and go to those that are going to provide the content you're looking for. Don't spend time going down rabbit holes. Everybody does it. I did it. I'm sure Aaron did it. Everybody does it, right? We go down rabbit holes. Try to focus on the things that are most important to you to put you ahead. What are you lacking? If you're lacking something, partner up with people until you are more proficient in understanding what you're lacking. There's 5 areas of investing that I think, 5 areas. It's how to find the deal. So it's kind of like mining, right? How to find the money. Where's the money going to come from? Now this goes beyond wholesaling. How to maintain the property, or how to manage, maintain, and market. Those are 5 areas. And if you are really good at one, but not the other 4, partner with somebody who is, and your partnership, maybe that's all you get is 20% of those 5 because you only carry 1 into the deal. But you can learn from other people who have the assets that you don't have. And that assets include knowledge and money and credibility. And so get with people who've done what you want to do, but learn those fundamentals, and you learn them by doing. You can't make offers, you can't buy properties unless you make offers. How do you make offers? Well, you got to learn how to price these things. How do you learn how to price them? You got to learn how to comp. You got to learn how to estimate repairs. You have to learn how to analyze. Is this a good deal or not? What's going to make it a good deal? We just provide you with a little over an hour's worth of creative financing options in addition to wholesaling. And partner with people who have what you don't have, and ask lots of questions. Lots and lots of questions. All right. I have found, this was enlightening to me, that in this industry, when you go to networking meetings, how many people are successful out there is astronomical, but how many of those people who are willing to share information with you? You don't always see that in other industries. You run a shop in a town, and you're selling widgets and there's another widget guy down the street, are they going to share their information with you about how they became successful? Highly unlikely. But in the real estate investor world, we got a giant pie. All we need are slivers to be incredibly wealthy. Aaron's community is doing that. Aaron has started to share what he has learned in his short while in real estate with people. And he's developing this powerful, powerful superhuman community of investors who are killing it out there because there's a sharing of knowledge and information. So I hope that resonates with some of you.
I'm sure it does. In fact, Facebook user says, learned so much from this, Tony. Thanks for having him on, Aaron. Absolutely got a wealth of knowledge from this. And there's so many other highlights that we'd definitely we don't have enough time to go over, but just so much love you were given from all of these different platforms. It's almost overwhelming. But yeah, thank you so much, Tony. We really, were you going to say something?
Just one thing. Let me just pitch one thing. My wife, Cindy, and I, we do a networking breakfast once a month in Arlington, Texas. Rudy's Barbecue, because who doesn't like barbecue and for breakfast? And so we do it once a month. Our next one is April 20th in Arlington. Reach out to me. You can find us on Meetup at Impact Arlington, and you'll see. If you're in the area, I'd love to see you. We just sit down, no agenda. We talk real estate, just like we did today.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, reach out to Tony. You can he's Tony Jardu on Facebook, or send me a DM, guys, and I will funnel you over to Tony because they're going to be doing a free meetup in Arlington. I love it. Well, I didn't even know that, Tony. Me and Cece might mess around and be there as well. I love it. I love it.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Aaron.
Absolutely. For those of you who are tuning in live and in replay land, make sure today, like it's your last day, love on your loved ones. If you're not home yet, make sure to drive safe, brush your teeth, and for goodness sakes, don't slap nobody. Until next time, have a blessed day, guys.
Awesome. Awesome.
We made it, that's facts, ayy. We the greatest, that's facts, ayy. Prices raising, that's facts, ayy. That's right. But we paid it, that's facts, ayy. I did. They hate it, that's facts, ayy. Cause we changing, that's facts, ayy. We did. Can't blame them, that's facts, ayy. Cause we made it, that's facts, ayy. Cherry on top, that's a goat, yeah. Where you been, I wanna know, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. Greatest story ever told, yeah. I know you wanna look up for this. Baby, let me turn you up a bit. You said you made it through hell and back. Give me the scoop, baby, tell the facts. Don't be shy.
Oh, snap. We still here.